Drivers are still paying too much for fuel. That is the finding of a new report released this morning by the Competition and Markets Authority.
The regulator said the difference between what retailers pay for petrol and diesel and what customers are charged at the pump are significantly above where they should be.
Let's speak to Sarah Cardell, who's Chief Executive of the CMA, joining us now. Very good morning to you. Could you just explain for us the extent to which people who use their cars and fill up are paying too much?
Yes. So at the CMA, we've been taking widespread action over the last 18 months to help people with cost of living pressures, whether that's actually filling up at the pump, but also buying groceries, feeding your babies, looking after your pets. But when it comes to road fuel prices, what we've seen is that drivers are still paying too much. We've put out updated analysis today that shows that the retail margins that retailers are earning on road fuel still significantly above historic levels, and that's costing drivers around £1.6 billion in 2023. Now, we've seen that as the result of weak competition between retailers. We know that over the last year or so, that drivers really are paying the price for this. And when we put out our report last year, we recommended the introduction of a new real-time fuel finder scheme that would reignite competition in this market. And it would really put the power back in the hands of drivers to be able to get live price information, for example, through sat-navs or map apps, so that you can plan your journey and get the best possible prices along the way. And given the updated analysis that we're publishing today, we really want to work now with the new government to make sure that that scheme can be introduced as quickly as possible.
Now, as I understand it, supermarkets are amongst those most criticised in your report for the extra they're putting on fuel prices. Can you explain that?
So what we've seen is that competition in this market really hasn't worked very well over the last few years. Historically, supermarkets, and particularly Asda, tended to be the cheapest retailers in this market. A few years back, Asda took the decision to target higher margins, and rather than other retailers reacting to that and offering better prices, all of the retailers have let their margins drift up, and it's drivers who've paid the price. So with this new fuel finder scheme, we really want to make sure that pressure is on the retailers to offer the best prices possible to drivers. The drivers can get that information, and we will also use our ongoing monitoring function to continue to hold this sector to account.
Can you put some numbers on this so that people understand it more clearly? Say for example, I go to a petrol station, forecourt, and I'm paying, I think these would be about the right figures, about £1.45 for unleaded. What should I be paying if they weren't putting those huge margins in? What price point? Give me a sort of a ballpark figure. I know this is not precise, but what should it be?
So obviously prices are going to go up and down with the price of oil. But what we've seen is that if you can get the best possible prices in an area, you can probably save up to around £4.50 every time you fill up your tank. And that makes a big difference to people week on week.
OK, that's a slightly different question in a way, because that's just the consumer looking around. My question was, if they were to drop their margins significantly, because you said supermarkets, for example, had more than doubled them, what would that £1.45 become? Would it become 90p? Would it become £1.10 approximately? What kind of margins are we talking about?
Well, if we look at historic margins, they've gone from around 4.5% in 2019 up to around 8% at the beginning of 2024. So that's a doubling of margins. Now, I'm not going to put precise figures on what the retailers should be charging, but this is a substantial increase over time. We know that there's room in those margins for prices to come down. That benefits drivers. Prices that could come down to enable drivers to save up to around £4.50 every time they fill up at the pump. We think that makes a real difference. We think it's time for retailers to act, and we think that this new fuel finder scheme is really the best way to arm drivers with the information they need to get the best deals possible.
So you're Chief Executive of the Competition and Markets Authority. Can you tell the retailers to behave differently? Do you have any powers to do that? Because it sounds like you're asking the consumer to do the work, and maybe they will react. Do you have a more direct way of going about business where you can tell them that they can't do this?
So we're doing a number of things. The first thing is that we've already made our recommendations to government to bring in this new scheme, and we're keen to work now with the new government to do that as quickly as possible. The second thing is that in the meantime, we're working with retailers, encouraging them. We don't have powers to require them, but we are encouraging them strongly to publish their pricing information, and that pricing can go into, for example, price finder websites that people can use to get the best information they can. The third thing we're doing is to continue to monitor this sector in the meantime, to publish these reports as regularly as possible to show people the pressure that is needed. Now, that is what we can do with the powers that we've got at the moment, and we want to work with government to introduce new powers to really require the retailers to show full pricing information and to give that, for example, to map companies so that we can get these apps and these sat-navs working best for people.
Sarah Cardell, thank you very much for your time this morning. Sarah Cardell is the Chief Executive of the Competition and Markets Authority.